The first thing I saw through my own kitchen window wasn't the homecoming I'd imagined for 15 years. It was my 32-year-old daughter Michelle pouring herself a glass of my best whiskey like she owned the place, while some guy I'd never seen before had his dirty boots up on my custom leather couch. Let me tell you who I am, so you understand what happened next. My name is Carl Stevens. I'm 67 years old, and that $2.8 million ranch house in DeKalb County, Georgia was supposed to be my retirement gift to my family. I built Stevens Construction from nothing, working 16-hour days for 40 years. And when I moved to Arizona for my health 15 years ago, I left that house for Michelle to live in while my foreman, Danny Rodriguez, kept the business running. The plan was simple. Michelle would finish nursing school, maybe get married, raise some grandkids in that house. Danny would manage the crews and send me monthly reports. I'd come back for visits, eventually retire for good when I hit 70. Everything was set up perfect. I was wrong about a lot of things. Standing there at my own front gate with my suitcase, looking through that window, something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be the reunion I'd been planning. Michelle looked different. Not just older, that happens in 15 years, but harder somehow. Thinner. And this guy with her, maybe late 20s, treating my house like his personal man cave. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Yeah, I rang the bell at my own house. Seemed like the polite thing to do after being gone so long, even though I'd been sending monthly checks for maintenance and calling every few weeks. Nobody answered. I could hear them talking inside, music playing, but nobody came to the door. The doorbell worked. I could hear it chiming. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I used my key. The door opened into the living room, and both of them looked at me like I was some door-to-door salesman who'd wandered in uninvited. "Michelle," I said, setting my suitcase down. "Honey, I'm home." She stared at me for a good 10 seconds. Not the happy surprise you'd expect from a daughter seeing her father after 2 years. More like she was trying to figure out how much trouble I was going to cause. "Dad," she finally said, "what are you doing here?" What was I doing there, in my own house? "I live here," I said. "This is my home. I called last week to tell you I was coming back permanently. Left 3 messages." The guy on my couch, still hadn't gotten his boots off my furniture, spoke up. "Michelle didn't mention you were coming. I'm Trevor." He didn't get up to shake hands, just gave me a little wave like I was the hired help. "Trevor," I repeated. "And you are what to my daughter exactly?" "Her fiancé," he said. "We've been together about 3 years now." Fiancé. News to me. Michelle had stopped returning my calls regularly about 4 years ago, but I figured she was just busy with her own life. Young, people don't call their parents every week like they used to. Michelle was looking uncomfortable now, twisting the whiskey glass in her hands. My whiskey glass, from the set I'd bought to celebrate my first $1 million contract back in 1998. "Dad, you should have called ahead," she said. "We could have prepared something, made arrangements." I did call, multiple times, and I sent that registered letter 3 weeks ago about moving back permanently. She had the decency to look embarrassed about that, at least. I looked around the living room. My furniture was still there, but everything else had changed. Pictures of Michelle and Trevor everywhere, like they were the owners. My workshop tools scattered around like decorations. The gun cabinet I'd built into the wall was empty. Probably sold my collection. "Where are all my things?" I asked. "My photos, my books, my workshop equipment?" Trevor answered before Michelle could. "We had to make some changes. House felt like a museum. We updated it to reflect the people actually living here." Actually living here, like I was just visiting. "Michelle," I said, "can we talk privately? Father to daughter?" She glanced at Trevor, and he nodded like he was giving her permission. That should have been my second red flag. after the first one being them not answering the door. We went into the kitchen. My kitchen, with the custom cabinets I'd designed and built myself in 1995. She leaned against the counter with her arms crossed, not meeting my eyes. "Dad, things have been really difficult," she started. "The house is expensive to maintain. Property taxes went up, utilities, repairs. I've been struggling to keep up." "Struggling how? I've been sending you $2,000 every month for exactly those expenses. Plus, didn't you finish nursing school? I paid for that. You should have a good job by now." She looked down at her feet. "Nursing didn't work out. Too stressful. The hours were crazy and the patients were demanding. I couldn't handle it. So, what have you been doing for work?" "Different things. Retail, waitressing, nothing steady." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Michelle, what happened to Stevens Construction? I haven't gotten a report from Danny in 6 months. He stopped answering my calls?" Trevor appeared in the doorway. Apparently, our private conversation wasn't private after all. "Maybe we should all sit down and talk about this like adults," he said. "Carl, you've been gone a long time. Things change. Michelle's been making hard decisions you weren't around to make." The way he said my name, Carl, not Mr. Stevens, told me everything about the respect I was getting in my own house. "What kind of hard decisions?" Michelle and Trevor exchanged another look. The kind married couples give each other when they're about to deliver bad news to the in-laws. "Dad," Michelle said quietly, "I had to sell the business." The words hit me like a 2x4 to the chest. "You what?" "Stevens Construction. I sold it 8 months ago. We needed the money." I had to grab the kitchen counter to stay upright. "Michelle, that business was worth $850,000. It was my life's work. It was supposed to be your inheritance." "It was failing," Trevor said, stepping closer. "She made a smart business decision." Failing? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stevens Construction was profitable every year for 30 years. I had 6 crews, $200,000 worth of equipment, contracts booked through next spring. Danny Rodriguez has been running it since I left, and he's the best foreman in the county. "Had," Trevor said. Past tense, and Danny quit 2 years ago, said he couldn't work with the new management structure. "New management structure? What new management structure? Michelle doesn't know anything about construction." "She learned," Trevor said. "Had to when you abandoned the business to play retirement in Arizona." Abandoned. Like I hadn't spent 15 years building something I could pass down to my daughter. "Michelle," I said, trying to stay calm, "tell me exactly what happened. Start from the beginning." She couldn't look at me. "Remember when you had the heart attack 3 years ago? You were in the hospital in Phoenix for 2 weeks, and they said you might need surgery?" I remembered. Mild heart attack, but it scared me enough to start taking better care of myself. I was in the hospital for 12 days, not 2 weeks, but close enough. "The doctors called me as your emergency contact," Michelle continued. "They said you were unconscious and they needed someone to make medical decisions, so I flew out there and signed the papers to become your power of attorney." For medical decisions, while I was unconscious. That's not the same as... "But then your lawyer in Phoenix said it would be easier if I had general power of attorney," she interrupted. "To handle your business affairs while you recovered, pay bills, manage the construction crews, that kind of thing." I felt ice forming in my veins. "What lawyer in Phoenix? I never hired a lawyer in Phoenix." Trevor smiled. "Michelle's lawyer. We flew him out to make sure everything was handled properly." They'd planned this. "So I signed the power of attorney papers," Michelle said, her voice getting smaller. "Just temporarily to help you while you were sick. But then Trevor pointed out that it would be much simpler if I just took ownership of everything, to protect your assets in case something happened to you." "Protect them from what?" "From the government," Trevor said. "Estate taxes, probate court, all that bureaucratic nonsense. This way, if you died, Michelle would already own everything legally. No hassle, no lawyers, no waiting. I stared at my daughter. Michelle, did you understand what you were signing? I thought I was helping you, she whispered. Trevor explained that lots of families do this kind of planning. He said it was smart. And where exactly did Trevor learn? About estate planning? Trevor's smile got wider. I used to work for a law firm, paralegal. I know how these things work. Used to work for a law firm. Past tense, probably got fired for exactly this kind of scheme. So let me get this straight, I said. While I was unconscious in a hospital bed, you forged my signature to transfer my entire life's work into Michelle's name. It wasn't forged, Michelle said quickly. I had power of attorney. The lawyer said it was completely legal. Power of attorney for medical decisions during a 2-week hospital stay, not blanket authorization to steal everything I've worked for. We didn't steal anything, Trevor snapped. Michelle inherited it early, that's all. You were going to leave it to her anyway. Leave it to her when I died, not when I had a minor heart attack at 64. Minor? Trevor laughed. You were practically dead. Michelle saved your legacy by taking control when you couldn't. I looked around my kitchen, really seeing it for the first time. The expensive coffee machine I'd never bought, the new stainless steel appliances, the granite countertops I'd installed myself, but now with new fixtures I didn't recognize. How much of my money have you spent? I asked. Michelle started crying. Real tears this time, not the crocodile tears from earlier. Dad, I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go so far. Trevor said we were just protecting your interests. How much, Michelle? The business sold for $820,000, she sobbed. But after paying off the debts and legal fees... What debts? Stevens Construction didn't have any debts, Trevor answered. Equipment loans, payroll taxes, contractor bonds, you know, the usual business expenses. Lies. All lies. I'd paid cash for every piece of equipment. Payroll taxes were current when I left, and contractor bonds don't work the way he was describing. Where's the money now? I asked. Invested, Trevor said. Real estate, stocks, some business, opportunities. Michelle's building a portfolio. I want to see the bank statements, all of them. Why? Trevor's friendly mask was slipping. You don't trust your own daughter? I don't trust you. Michelle looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Dad, I know this looks bad, but we can work this out. You can stay here, we can all live together. Trevor's got some great ideas for investment properties. Investment properties. With my money. Michelle, do you have any idea what you've done? That business supported 6 families. Danny Rodriguez has been with me for 20 years. His son just started working for us last summer. Those crews depended on those jobs. They found other work, Trevor said. The construction industry is booming. You destroyed 30 years of reputation and relationships so you could play stock market with my life savings. We're building wealth, Trevor said. Something you never understood. You just worked and saved, worked and saved. Michelle's generation thinks bigger. Thinks bigger. Right. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Sarah Martinez, the estate attorney who'd helped me set up the original property arrangements when I moved to Arizona. What are you doing? Trevor asked, suddenly nervous. Calling my lawyer. My real lawyer. Dad, please, Michelle said. Can't we just talk about this? Work something out as a family? I looked at her, really looked at her. The little girl I'd taught to swing a hammer. The teenager I'd driven to job interviews. The young woman I'd been so proud of when she got into nursing school. Michelle, I said softly, we stopped being a family the day you decided to steal from me. I dialed Sarah's number, praying she was still practicing law. Sarah answered on the 3rd ring. Martinez Law Office, this is Sarah. Sarah, this is Carl Stevens. I need to see you immediately. Emergency. Mr. Stevens, I thought you were living in Arizona. Is everything all right? No, it's not. I'm back in Georgia, and I've got a serious problem. My daughter has been forging documents and stealing my assets while I was gone. I can be there in 45 minutes. Are you at the ranch house? Yes. And Sarah? You might want to bring everything from my file. All of it. I'll be right there. Trevor was trying to look confident, but I could see sweat starting to bead on his forehead. Carl, I really think you're overreacting. This is family business. We can work this out without dragging lawyers into it. We stopped being family when you convinced my daughter to rob me, I said. Michelle was still crying, but now she looked scared too. Dad, what's going to happen? That depends on how much of my money you've spent and how honest you're willing to be about what really happened. The next 45 minutes felt like the longest of my life. I sat in my living room, looking around at what used to be my home, while Trevor tried to make small talk, and Michelle stared at her hands. Nobody was drinking whiskey anymore. When Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, Trevor jumped up. Maybe I should give you folks some privacy, family matters and all that. Sit down, I said. You're part of this now. Sarah Martinez hadn't changed much in 15 years. Maybe some gray in her hair, but the same sharp eyes and no-nonsense walk. She came through the front door carrying a briefcase in one hand and a thick accordion file in the other. Mr. Stevens, she said, setting everything down on my coffee table. Tell me what's happened. I gave her the whole story. The power of attorney fraud, the business sale, the property transfer, everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked at Michelle and Trevor. I need to see every document you signed. Power of attorney papers, property transfer documents, business sale contracts, bank statements, everything. Trevor started to object. I don't think we're required to. You're not required to, Sarah said calmly. But if you refuse to cooperate, I'll assume you're hiding something and proceed accordingly. Michelle went upstairs and came back with a manila folder stuffed with papers. Her hands were shaking as she set it on the table. Sarah opened the folder and started examining documents. After about 10 minutes, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Mr. Stevens, do you remember why you insisted on the reversionary clause when we set up the original property transfer? Reversionary clause? Michelle asked. What's that? Sarah kept looking at me. Your father was very specific about protecting himself against exactly this situation, against financial exploitation by family members. Trevor went pale. What are you talking about? Sarah pulled a document from her accordion file. It was thick, official-looking, with multiple signatures and a notary seal. When Mr. Stevens transferred this property to Michelle 15 years ago, he didn't just give it to her outright. He transferred it with very specific legal protections. She opened the document and started reading. Property ownership remains with Carl Stevens until his death or written authorization for permanent transfer. Any attempt to sell, mortgage, or transfer the property without explicit written consent from Carl Stevens renders the transfer null and void, with full ownership reverting immediately to Carl Stevens. That's not possible, Trevor said. We never saw any document like that. Because you weren't supposed to, Sarah replied. This was protection against exactly what you've done. Mr. Stevens was worried about someone taking advantage of Michelle, so he built in safeguards. I remembered now. Sarah had explained it to me 15 years ago, but I'd honestly hoped I'd never need it. What about the business? Sarah pulled out another document. Stevens' construction was placed in a similar trust structure. Michelle had beneficial interest, meaning she'd inherit when you died, but she never had legal authority to sell it. Trevor was getting agitated now. This is ridiculous. Michelle had full power of attorney. She could make any decisions she wanted. Medical power of attorney, Sarah corrected, for a 2-week period while Mr. Stevens was hospitalized. That doesn't include authority to transfer assets worth nearly $1 million. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the FBI. The FBI? Michelle's voice was barely a whisper. Elder fraud is a federal crime, especially when it involves forged documents and interstate commerce. Mr. Stevens was living in Arizona when you allegedly signed power of attorney papers on his behalf in Georgia. Trevor bolted for the door, but Sarah was already talking to someone. This is Sarah Martinez, attorney for Carl Stevens. I need to report elder fraud and document forgery. Yes, I can hold. Trevor, don't you dare leave. I called after him, but he was already out the door. I heard his car starting up in the driveway. Michelle collapsed into a chair. Dad, I'm so sorry. I never understood what I was signing. Trevor said it was all legal, that we were helping you plan your estate. How much of the $820,000 is left? Sarah asked. Michelle couldn't look at either of us. Maybe $150,000. Trevor invested most of it in some business deals that didn't work out. And we bought some things for the house, took a few trips. $670,000 in 8 months, I said. That's over $80,000 a month. The FBI is sending agents, Sarah said, closing her phone. They'll want to examine all financial records, interview everyone involved. Michelle, I strongly recommend you get your own lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer, Michelle sobbed. I don't have any money left. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal from your father, Sarah said. It wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. The FBI agents arrived. 30 minutes later, Special Agent Keith Rodriguez and Agent Lisa Thompson. They looked like they'd done this kind of thing many times before. Mr. Stevens, Agent Rodriguez said, we understand you're the victim of elder fraud. Can you walk us through what happened? I told the story again while Agent Thompson took photos of all the documents. They asked detailed questions about the timeline, about my relationship with Michelle, about Trevor's background. Do you know Trevor's last name? Agent Rodriguez asked Michelle. Walsh, she said quietly. Trevor Walsh. Agent Thompson looked up from her notes. We know Trevor Walsh. He's got priors for financial fraud targeting elderly victims. This isn't his first time. Michelle's face went white. Priors? He never told me he had a criminal record. 3 convictions in the past 5 years, Agent Rodriguez said. Looks like you were his latest target, and he used you to get to your father's assets. That's when it really hit me. My own daughter hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been used by a professional con man who made his living off other people's hard work and trust. And now we were all going to have to live with the consequences. The FBI didn't take long to track down Trevor Walsh. They found him at a casino in Atlantic City 3 days later, trying to cash out what was left of my money at the poker tables. Turns out running cons on elderly people doesn't make you smart enough to disappear properly. Agent Rodriguez called me personally with the news. We arrested Walsh this morning. He's waived extradition. He'll be back in Georgia by the end of the week. And Mr. Stevens, we found bank records showing where most of your money went. How much can we recover? Hard to say yet. About $180,000 is still in accounts we can freeze. The rest went to fake investment schemes, luxury purchases, and gambling debts. We'll get what we can, but you should prepare for the fact that most of it's gone. Most of it, nearly. $700,000 of my life's work, pissed away by a career criminal and my own daughter. The legal process took 8 months. Trevor got 12 years in federal prison. His 4th conviction for elder fraud bumped him up to repeat offender status. Michelle got 18 months and 3 years supervised probation. The judge said he was being lenient because she'd been manipulated, but that she was still responsible for her choices. During the trial, more details came out about Trevor's operation. He'd been targeting older men with adult daughters for over 6 years. He'd researched them online, find out about their assets, then work his way into their families through romance. Michelle was just his latest mark, and I was the biggest payday he'd ever scored. The hardest part wasn't the money, or even the legal stuff. It was sitting in that courtroom watching my daughter testify about how she'd signed away everything I'd worked for because a man she'd known for 3 years convinced her it was the right thing to do. "I trusted him completely," she said on the witness stand. "He made me feel like we were building a future together, like we were protecting Dad's legacy. I never questioned his advice because I thought he loved me." Love. Trevor Walsh had about as much capacity for love as a snake has for flying. We recovered $240,000 total. The frozen accounts, plus some assets the FBI seized from Trevor's other victims. Not much compared to what was stolen, but better than nothing. The reversionary clause Sarah had built into the property transfer saved the house. That went back to me automatically once the fraud was proven in court. Michelle had to move out, of course. She couldn't afford to stay anyway, and frankly, I wasn't sure I could handle living with her again. She wrote me letters from prison. Long letters, apologizing and explaining and trying to make me understand how Trevor had manipulated her thinking. Maybe some of it was true. Maybe Trevor really had convinced her she was helping me. But she was 32 years old when she signed those papers, not some naive teenager. I didn't write back. When she got out of prison, she moved to Alabama to stay with her cousin Janet. We talked on the phone exactly once. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I told her I didn't know. That was 2 years ago. I still don't know. But here's the thing about getting older. You learn that some things are worth more than money, and some things can't be replaced no matter how much money you have. I sold the ranch house. Too many bad memories. And frankly, it was too big for one old man anyway. Used the money to buy a smaller place in town, closer to where my old crew used to work. Turns out Danny Rodriguez had started his own company after Michelle drove him away from Stevens Construction. He hired back 4 of my old crew members, and they were doing good work. Residential repairs, small commercial jobs, the kind of steady business I'd built my reputation on. "Carl," Danny said when I called him, "I've been wondering when you'd come back. We could use another experienced hand if you're interested." I started working with Danny's crew 3 days a week. Not the heavy lifting I used to do. I'm 70 now, and my back reminds me of that every morning. But consulting, estimating jobs, teaching the younger guys proper techniques. It felt good to be useful again. To be around people who understood the satisfaction of building something solid with your own hands. I also started volunteering with the county's Elder Services Department, talking to other seniors about protecting themselves from financial fraud. Turns out my story wasn't unique. Happens more often than most people realize. Adult children, romantic partners, even professional caregivers targeting older folks who've worked hard and saved money their whole lives. The key, I tell them, is to set up protections before you need them. Don't wait until you're sick or isolated to think about who you can trust with your affairs. Some of them listen. Some of them think it'll never happen to them because their families would never do such a thing. I used to think that too. I'm not rich anymore. The house, the business, most of the money I'd saved for retirement, gone. But I've got enough to live on, good friends to work with, and a purpose that gets me up in the morning. And I sleep better at night knowing that Trevor Walsh is in a federal prison cell, where he can't hurt any other families the way he hurt mine. Michelle sends me a Christmas card every year. Just a generic card with her signature, no personal message. I don't send one back, but I don't throw hers away either. Maybe someday we'll find a way to talk again. Maybe not. Either way, I'm doing all right. Building things again, helping people, making sure other folks don't go through what I went through. It's not the retirement I planned, but it's honest work with good people. At 70 years old, that's enough. That's more than enough. You can't protect yourself from every betrayal, but you can choose whether it defines the rest of your story. The best revenge against someone who tried to steal your legacy is to keep building it, one honest day at a time.